The stars stretched endlessly across the viewing screen of the alien ship called Infinite Regard. Commander Lyeth stood perfectly still, watching the strange vessel that floated in the darkness ahead. His species, the Velkari, had been traveling through space for 3,000 years. They had met 43 different alien races. They had seen technology that could destroy planets and machines that could build entire cities in days, but they had never seen anything quite like the human ship in front of them. The human vessel was called the Defiance. It was big, nearly as large as Lyeth's own ship, and it had a rough, functional look to it. No elegant curves or artistic designs like most species preferred, just hard angles and thick armor plating. It looked like something built for war, not exploration. Lyeth had heard the rumors about humans. They were new to this part of space, barely 300 years into traveling between stars. Most species took thousands of years to develop the technology humans already possessed. This made many aliens nervous. What else might these humans have created in such a short time? "Begin the scanning sequence," Lyeth ordered. His voice came out as musical tones that the ship's computer translated into words the crew could understand. The scanning officer, a young Velkari named Prith, touched the controls with his thin, crystal-like fingers. "Starting deep scan now, Commander." The scanning technology the Velkari used was the best in the known galaxy. It could look through any material, see through any shield, and map every system inside a ship. This technology had kept the Velkari alive for millennia. If they could see what weapons another species had, they could decide whether to fight, flee, or make friends. Knowledge was safety, ignorance was death. The scan beam shot out from their ship, invisible to the naked eye but powerful enough to see through solid metal. It reached the human vessel and began to penetrate the outer hull. Then everything went wrong. Every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Red lights flashed across every surface. The scanning officer's station exploded with warning messages. "Commander!" Prith's voice was high with panic. "The scan is bouncing back. It's coming back at us, and it's stronger. Much stronger." Lyeth moved faster than his elderly frame should have allowed. "Stop the scan now!" "I'm trying." "The system won't respond." Prith's fingers flew across the controls, but nothing worked. The reflected scan hit their ship like a hammer. Screens went dark. The ship's computer started speaking in languages nobody recognized. Smoke began pouring from several control panels. The emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. Then, as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The bridge was silent except for the sound of small fires being extinguished by automatic systems. Lyeth looked around at the damage. Half their scanning equipment was destroyed. The computer was rebooting. Several crew members were injured from flying debris or electrical shocks. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Lyeth stared at the communication panel. The humans were calling them. He accepted the call. A human woman appeared on the screen. She had dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that seemed to look right through him. The name below her face read Captain Lisa Morgan. "This is your only warning," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "The next ship that tries to scan a human vessel will have less time to react. You'll have about 4 seconds to evacuate your bridge before your own scanning system destroys your power core. I suggest you update your first contact procedures." The screen went dark. Lyeth stood in the ruined bridge, trying to process what had just happened. In 3,000 years of space travel, in 43 first contact situations, nobody had ever done this. Nobody had ever turned their own technology against them. Nobody had ever made scanning a ship a potentially lethal activity. "Sir?" Prith's voice was quiet. "What do we do?" Lyeth looked at the young officer, then at the human ship still floating peacefully in the distance. "Get me a connection to the Galactic Council. Maximum priority, and someone find out everything we can about these humans. But whatever you do, don't scan their ships." The Infinite Regard limped away from the encounter, leaving the Defiance floating alone in space. Inside the human vessel, Captain Morgan turned away from the communication screen and looked at her crew. "How many warnings did we broadcast before they scanned us?" she asked. Her first officer, a man named Danny Cooper, checked his console. 17 different warnings, Captain, in 23 different languages, including their own. We told them clearly that unauthorized scans would trigger defensive measures. And they scanned us anyway, Morgan said. She didn't sound angry, just tired. Add them to the list. Make sure every human ship knows that the Velkari tried to scan us without permission. If they try it again, we'll know it wasn't an accident. Do you think they'll spread the word? Cooper asked. Morgan smiled slightly. Oh, they'll tell everyone. That's what we're counting on. The Velkari are one of the most respected species in this region. If they tell other aliens not to scan us, most will listen. The ones who don't listen will learn the same lesson. And if they decide we're too dangerous and attack us, then they'll learn an even harder lesson, Morgan said quietly. We didn't come out here to make enemies, Danny. But we didn't come out here to be pushed around either. Every species we've met so far thinks they have the right to scan our ships, read our secrets, and assess our weaknesses. They've been doing it for so long they think it's normal. They think it's their right. She stood up and walked to the viewing screen, looking out at the stars. Well, it's not their right. Not with us. We'll share what we want to share when we want to share it, with people we trust. And trust is something you earn, not something you take. Cooper nodded. The other ships in the fleet are asking for updates. What should I tell them? Tell them the first test is complete. Tell them the Velkari took the bait and learned their lesson. And tell them to stay alert. The Velkari will talk, and when they do, someone else is going to want to test us too. Someone always does. Morgan was right. At that very moment, across dozens of star systems, the news was spreading. The Velkari had tried to scan a human ship. The Velkari, with their legendary scanning technology, had been defeated by a simple defensive measure. Their equipment was damaged. Their pride was wounded. And the humans had barely lifted a finger. In council chambers and military headquarters across the galaxy, the smartest aliens were taking notes. They were updating their protocols. They were warning their ships to approach human vessels with caution. But not everyone was smart. Not everyone would listen. Some species would see the Velkari's failure as a challenge. Some would think their technology was better, their methods more sophisticated. Some would convince themselves that they could succeed where the Velkari had failed. Those species would learn. One way or another, they would all learn the same lesson. Don't scan the human ships. Part 2. The Galactic Council building was enormous. It floated in space near a bright blue star, a massive station that housed representatives from 300 different species. The main chamber was designed so that everyone could see and hear each other, no matter what kind of body they had or what atmosphere they breathed. Some aliens sat in chairs. Others floated in tanks of liquid. Some existed as clouds of gas contained in force fields. Today, almost every seat was filled. The emergency session had been called by the Velkari, and everyone wanted to hear what had happened. Rumors had been flying through space for days. The humans had attacked a Velkari ship. The humans had destroyed Velkari technology. The humans had weapons that could burn through shields like paper. Ambassador Chen Wei walked calmly to the center platform. He was an older human with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. Beside him walked Commander Jake Harris, wearing the dark blue uniform of the human military. Both men looked completely relaxed, as if standing before 300 potentially hostile alien species was just another day at work. Counselor Vren spoke first. He was a large alien with 6 arms and skin that changed colors when he was emotional. Right now, his skin was a deep purple, which meant he was either angry or worried. The Velkari Collective has filed a formal complaint, Vren announced. His voice boomed through the chamber. They say that human ships have weapons that violate the Sapient Rights Accord. Specifically, they say you have weaponized scanning technology. This is against council law. Chen Wei nodded politely. Counselor Vren, I understand the complaint. However, humanity never signed the Sapient Rights Accord. We were never asked to sign it. We were never even told it existed until after the incident with the Velkari. You cannot hold us to laws we never agreed to follow. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens speaking in hundreds of languages, all trying to talk at once. Some seemed angry. Others seemed confused. A few seemed pleased, as if they had been waiting for someone to challenge the council. Vren raised 2 of his arms, calling for silence. You may not have signed the accord, but surely you understand why it exists. The rules about scanning are meant to prevent misunderstandings. They help keep peace. Commander Harris stepped forward. With respect, Counselor, your rules help keep peace between species who already agree to follow them. What happens when someone doesn't agree? What happens when a species wants privacy? Privacy? The word came from Ambassador Lyeth of the Velkari. He had been standing quietly in the corner, but now he moved to where everyone could see him. You speak of privacy while hiding weapons in your ships. You speak of peace while attacking those who try to ensure you are not a threat. This is not reasonable behavior. Chen Wei turned to face the Velkari ambassador. Ambassador Lyeth, let me ask you a question. If I came to your homeworld and tried to scan your government buildings, your military bases, and your personal home, how would you react? Would you welcome it? Would you help me gather that information? Lyeth was quiet for a moment. That is different. Those are sovereign territories. Exactly, Chenwei said. And so are our ships. Each human vessel is sovereign human territory. You want to know what's inside? Then ask, send us a message. Request a tour through proper diplomatic channels. We might say yes. We might say no. But trying to force your way into our ships without permission? That's not diplomacy. That's espionage. And we will defend against espionage. A new voice spoke up. It belonged to Counselor Thren, a being that looked like a large insect with shimmering scales. But Ambassador Chenwei, how can we trust you if we cannot verify that you are safe? How do we know your ships don't carry weapons that could destroy planets? How do we know you're not planning to conquer us all? Chenwei smiled, though his eyes remained cold. Counselor, how do we know the same about you? We've been in this region of space for less than a year. We've met dozens of species, and every single one has tried to scan our ships without permission. Every single one has tried to gather intelligence on us without our consent. From our perspective, you are the ones who look untrustworthy. The chamber went silent again. Nobody seemed to know what to say to that. Jake Harris continued where Chenwei left off. Let me tell you something about humans. We come from a world where privacy is considered a basic right. We come from a culture that says you don't get to know everything about someone just because you're curious or nervous. Trust is earned, not demanded, and forcing your way into our secrets is not how you earn our trust. So what do you propose? Vren asked. That we simply accept your presence without knowing anything about you? That we allow ships we cannot scan to move freely through council space? Yes, Chenwei said simply. That's exactly what we propose. Accept us as equals, not subjects. Treat us with the same respect you show each other. And if you're genuinely concerned about our capabilities, then talk to us. Build a relationship with us. Earn the right to know our secrets. Lyeth spoke again, his voice carrying a note of frustration. You make it sound so simple, but it is not. The Council has maintained peace for thousands of years through transparency. Every species shares information about their capabilities. This prevents wars because everyone knows the cost of conflict. You are disrupting a system that works. Your system works for you, Harris replied. It works for species who had no choice but to join. But what about species who are strong enough to refuse? What about species who value their privacy more than your comfort? Your system only works because nobody has challenged it before. Well, we're challenging it now. Chenwei raised a hand before anyone could respond. But we're not unreasonable people. We understand your concerns. So here's what humanity is willing to offer. We will allow limited inspections of our vessels, conducted through proper diplomatic channels with advance notice. We will share general specifications of our technology, enough to prove we're not carrying super weapons. We will participate in joint military exercises to show we're not planning aggression, but we will not allow unrestricted scanning, and we will continue to defend our ships against any unauthorized attempts. Vren considered this. His skin was slowly changing from purple to a lighter blue, which meant he was becoming less upset. And if we refuse your terms? Harris's expression hardened. Then we continue as we are. You can choose to work with us or against us. You can choose to respect our boundaries or test them. But I promise you, Counselor, testing human boundaries is expensive. The Velkari learned that. Others will too if they're foolish enough to try. The chamber erupted into debate again. Some species thought the human offer was reasonable. Others thought it was an insult. A few seemed to think the humans were bluffing and could be intimidated into submission. Chenwei and Harris stood calmly in the center of it all, waiting for the council to make its decision. Both men knew this was just the beginning. The council had never dealt with a species like humanity before. They were used to being the strongest, the most advanced, the ones who made the rules. Having someone say no to them was a new and uncomfortable experience. But discomfort was part of growth. The council would adapt or it would break. Either way, humanity was not going to back down. They had not traveled across the stars just to bow to the first powerful alliance they met. They had not built their defensive systems just to deactivate them when someone complained. The meeting continued for hours. Arguments flew back and forth. Threats were made and dismissed. Compromises were suggested and rejected. But slowly, gradually, a consensus began to form. Not everyone was happy with it, but enough species were willing to try a new approach. Vren finally called for order, one last time. The Council has decided to accept your proposal on a trial basis. We will work with you through diplomatic channels. We will not require you to submit to unrestricted scanning. However, any human vessel that enters Council space must broadcast clear warnings about your defensive measures, and any human vessel that causes damage to a Council ship will be held accountable. Chen Wei nodded. We can agree to those terms. Our ships already broadcast warnings in multiple languages, and we have no intention of causing damage to anyone who respects our boundaries. As the meeting ended and the delegates began to leave, Lyeth approached Chen Wei. The two ambassadors stood facing each other, representatives of very different philosophies. This is not over, Lyeth said quietly. There are species who will not accept this, species who will see your refusal as a challenge. Chen Wei nodded. I know, but that's their choice to make. We'll be ready for them. Lyeth studied the human for a long moment. I believe you will. That is what concerns me. Part 3. The Korthian Empire controlled 12 star systems and had never lost a war. Their military was legendary. Their technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy. When Admiral Krell heard about the incident between the humans and the Velkari, he did not see a warning. He saw an insult. Krell stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Victory. It was the largest warship in the Korthian fleet, bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could stop almost any attack. Around him, his crew worked efficiently at their stations. They were professionals, veterans of a dozen conflicts. They feared nothing. On the viewing screen ahead, a small human ship floated peacefully. It was called the Pioneer, a patrol vessel maybe 1/5 the size of the Crushing Victory. To Krell, it looked insignificant, weak, hardly worth his attention. A simple patrol craft, his tactical officer observed. The officer was young but competent, handwriting from a prestigious military academy. Surely their defensive systems cannot be as strong on such a small vessel. Krell clicked his mandibles together, a sign of agreement in his species. The Velkari were careless. They used a full military scan, which obviously triggered an aggressive response. We will be smarter. Begin a low-intensity scan, level 3. If their system activates, we will have time to shut down before any damage occurs. The tactical officer hesitated. Sir, the humans are broadcasting a warning. They say any scanning attempt will be met with defensive countermeasures. Krell's mandibles clicked again, but this time in irritation. I am aware of their warning, Lieutenant. I am also aware that we are the Korthian Empire, not some merchant vessel afraid of shadows. These humans need to learn that operating in this region means accepting our security procedures. Begin the scan, the officer obeyed. The scanning beam emerged from the Crushing Victory, invisible but powerful. It was designed to be subtle, to gather information without being detected. The Korthians had used this technique for years, often scanning other species' ships without them ever knowing. The beam reached the human ship and began to penetrate the hull. Aboard the Pioneer, Lieutenant Chris Murphy glanced at his sensor display. He was a young officer, barely 30 years old, but he had been trained well. Captain, we're being scanned. It's a Korthian dreadnought bearing 275, low intensity, trying to be sneaky. Captain Helen Wright did not even look up from the report she was reading. She was a veteran, calm and unshakable. She had seen combat before, had commanded ships in hostile territory, and nothing surprised her anymore. Standard response, Lieutenant. Yes, Captain. Activating mirror protocol now. Murphy pressed a single button on his console. What happened next occurred faster than any human could follow. The Pioneer's hull plating, laced with quantum-entangled particles, detected the incoming scan. It analyzed the frequency, the intensity, the origin point. Then it did something the Korthians had not anticipated. It reflected the scan back, but not as a simple mirror. It amplified the scan exponentially and injected malicious code into the beam. On the bridge of the Crushing Victory, chaos erupted instantly. Feedback surge. The tactical officer screamed. His display was flashing red with warnings. It's overloading the primary scanner array. I cannot shut it down. Krell watched in horror as his most advanced scanning system began to destroy itself. Smoke poured from control panels. Sparks flew across the bridge. The temperature began to rise as the system overheated. All power to forward shields, Krell ordered. Redirect engine capacity to defensive systems. But the human countermeasure was not finished. The reflected scan was carrying something else, a computer virus designed specifically to exploit scanning systems. It spread through the Korthian ship's network like wildfire. jumping from system to system faster than their security could react. Screens across the bridge went dark, then came back on showing images that made no sense. Cartoon characters danced across tactical displays. The ship's artificial intelligence began speaking in a human language, reciting something that sounded like children's poetry. Navigation systems showed their location as something called New York City on Earth. Then, adding injury to insult, every external speaker on the crushing Victory began playing music. Loud, cheerful human music that echoed through the ship's corridors and out into space. Krell stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. His flagship, the pride of the Korthian fleet, had been reduced to a joke in less than 30 seconds. And the humans had done it without firing a single weapon. The communication system, apparently the only thing still working properly, chimed with an incoming message. Krell accepted it, not knowing what else to do. Captain Wright appeared on the screen. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes held something that might have been amusement. "This is Captain Helen Wright of the Pioneer. Your scanning array is currently offline, and your computer systems have been compromised. I'm transmitting a restoration package to you now. It will clean the virus from your systems and reboot everything to default settings." "You're welcome." She paused, letting that sink in. "And Admiral Krell, the next time we tell you not to scan our ships, perhaps you should listen. We don't give warnings for fun. We give them because we're trying to be polite. But our politeness has limits." The transmission ended. Krell stood in the ruins of his bridge, listening to the cheerful human music, and felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of destruction or death, but fear of inadequacy. The humans had not just defeated his technology. They had made it look easy. They had made him look foolish. "Sir?" The tactical officer's voice was quiet. "The restoration package is downloading. Should we accept it?" Krell wanted to refuse. He wanted to fix the systems himself, to prove that the Korthians did not need human help. But pride was a luxury he could not afford right now. His ship was crippled, floating in space with half its systems compromised. If another threat appeared, they would be helpless. "Accept it," he said quietly, "and send a message to the fleet. No ship is to attempt scanning human vessels. Consider it a direct order from this command." The officer nodded and began working to implement the restoration package. As the systems slowly came back online, Krell thought about what had happened. The humans had turned his own technology against him. They had used his scan as a weapon, as a delivery system for their virus. It was clever, brutally clever, and it suggested something far more worrying than simple defensive measures. It suggested that the humans had been planning for this. They had anticipated that species would try to scan them despite the warnings. They had prepared countermeasures specifically designed to exploit scanning technology, which meant they had studied galactic technology before anyone had studied theirs. Krell pulled up the reports about humanity that the Korthian Intelligence Service had gathered. There was not much information. Humans were new to this region of space. They had appeared less than a year ago with ships that were advanced but not extraordinary. They had been polite but distant. They had avoided sharing details about their technology or capabilities. Now Krell understood why. The humans were not afraid of being scanned. They were not hiding because they were weak. They were hiding because they were smart. By refusing to share information, by defending their secrets so aggressively, they had created an aura of mystery and danger around themselves. Other species did not know what humans were capable of, so they assumed the worst, and assumptions were powerful weapons. The restoration package finished installing. One by one, the systems came back online. The cartoon characters disappeared. The artificial intelligence stopped reciting poetry. The music finally, mercifully, stopped playing. The bridge returned to normal, though several pieces of equipment would need to be replaced. Krell looked at the small human ship still floating peacefully in the distance. It had not moved. It had not powered up weapons or raised additional shields. It just sat there as if nothing had happened, as if crippling a Korthian dreadnought was not worth getting excited about. "Take us back to base," Krell ordered, "and someone get me everything we have on human technology. I want to know how they did this." The crushing Victory turned away and began the journey home, leaving the Pioneer alone in space. Inside the human vessel, Captain Wright returned to her reports as if nothing had happened. "Should we report the incident to command?" Murphy asked. Wright nodded. Standard report. Corthian vessel attempted unauthorized scan. We responded with standard countermeasures, no damage to either ship. Include the transmission record so they can see we gave proper warning. Do you think they'll spread the word like the Velkari did? Oh, they'll spread the word, Wright said confidently. The Corthians are proud, but they're not stupid. Admiral Krell is probably already sending orders to his entire fleet to avoid scanning us. And when the other empires hear that both the Velkari and the Corthians failed, they'll start being more careful too. Murphy grinned. Think anyone else will try? Someone always tries, Wright replied. There's always one species that thinks they're smarter or better or luckier than everyone else. They'll test us eventually, and when they do, we'll teach them the same lesson we taught the others. She looked out at the stars, her expression thoughtful. That's the thing about lessons, Lieutenant. Part 4. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was even more crowded than the first one. Word of the Corthian incident had spread faster than light-speed communication. Now every species in the Council wanted answers. They wanted to understand what the humans had done, how they had done it, and most importantly, what it meant for everyone else. Ambassador Chen Wei returned to the central platform, but this time he brought reinforcements. Dr. Linda Hayes stood beside him, a scientist in her late 40s with sharp eyes and an impatient demeanor. On his other side stood Admiral Peter Bennett, a gray-haired military veteran whose uniform displayed more medals than most species had wars. Counselor Vren did not waste time with formalities. His skin was a dark red color now, indicating serious concern. Ambassador Chen Wei, the Corthian Empire, has filed a formal complaint. They claim you engaged in cyber warfare against a military vessel that was conducting routine security procedures. They say you permanently damaged their equipment and humiliated their admiral. They demand compensation and an immediate halt to your aggressive defensive measures. Chen Wei's expression remained calm. Counselor, the Corthian Empire initiated an act of espionage against a human vessel after being clearly warned not to. We responded exactly as we said we would. As for their damaged equipment, we provided them with free repair software within minutes. If they feel humiliated, perhaps they should have listened to our warnings. A new voice spoke up. It belonged to Counselor Hin, a being that lived inside a tank of liquid methane. Her translated voice sounded like wind chimes. Ambassador, what we struggle to understand is your motivation. Why such extreme measures? Most species eventually agree to standard scanning protocols once they understand the benefits. Why do you resist so strongly? Admiral Bennett stepped forward. May I answer that, Ambassador? Chen Wei nodded. Bennett looked around the chamber, making sure he had everyone's attention. Let me tell you about human history. We are young compared to most of you. We've only been traveling between stars for 3 centuries, but we've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We've learned, through terrible experience, what happens when you trust the wrong people with your secrets. He paused, letting the translation systems catch up. Humans have a saying, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. We learned that sharing everything makes you vulnerable. We learned that the species with the most information has the most power. We learned that privacy is not just a preference, it's a survival strategy. Dr. Hayes spoke next. Her voice was crisp and professional, like a teacher explaining something obvious to slow students. Our scanning countermeasures are not weapons. They're tests. When someone scans our ships, we learn about them. We learn about their scanning technology, their tactics, their intentions, and we use all of that information to decide whether they approached us as friends or as threats. She pulled up a holographic display showing technical readouts. The Velkari used a full military deep scan. That's the kind of scan you use when you're planning an attack, when you need to know exactly where to shoot. The Corthians used a stealth scan, trying to gather intelligence without us knowing. Both actions told us these species were not interested in peaceful communication. They were interested in assessing us as potential targets. The chamber erupted in protest. Several counselors tried to speak at once, their translators overlapping in a cacophony of outrage. Vren called for order. Dr. Hayes, are you suggesting that standard council security protocols are inherently hostile? I'm suggesting, Hayes replied carefully, that your protocols were developed by species who never had to worry about being on the receiving end. You've been the powerful ones for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be evaluated, assessed, and cataloged against your will. You treat scanning like it's a polite greeting, but from our perspective, it's an invasion. Ambassador Lyeth of the Velkari rose from his seat. His crystalline body caught the light as he moved. Dr. Hayes, the Council maintains peace through mutual transparency. Every species shares their capabilities. This prevents wars because everyone knows the cost of conflict. You are disrupting a system that has worked for millennia. Has it? Admiral Bennett asked. Because from what I've read, the Council has fought 47 wars in the last 3,000 years, all against species who refuse to submit to your transparency requirements. That doesn't sound like a perfect system to me. It sounds like a system that works fine as long as everyone agrees to it, and attacks anyone who doesn't. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Chen Wei spoke into that silence, his voice measured and diplomatic. Counselors, we understand your concerns. We truly do. But you must understand ours as well. Humanity is currently the newest species in Council space. We are unknown. We are unpredictable, and that makes us a target for anyone who fears the unknown. He gestured at the holographic display. If we allowed unrestricted scanning, you would learn everything about our ships. You would learn our strengths and, more importantly, our weaknesses. And if any conflict ever arose, you would have every advantage. By maintaining our privacy, by refusing to be an open book, we ensure that anyone considering aggression has to factor in uncertainty. They have to wonder what we're capable of, and that uncertainty is our best defense. So you admit you are hiding something, a counselor accused. We're hiding everything, Bennett replied bluntly, just like you hide your military specifications, just like you protect your government secrets, just like you secure your private communications. Everyone hides things, counselor. The only difference is we're honest about it. Dr. Hayes added another image to the holographic display. When the Velkari scanned us, we learned they use a triphase scanning array with quantum entanglement markers. When the Korthians scanned us, we learned they prefer stealth scans with low-frequency penetration. We now know more about their technology than they know about ours. That information is valuable. It helps us assess whether these species can be trusted. And your assessment? Vren asked. The Velkari are cautious and value their crew's safety, Hayes said. When their scan reflected back, their first action was to protect their people, not their technology. That suggests pragmatism and a respect for life. The Korthians, however, prioritized pride over caution. They ignored our warnings because they assumed their technology was superior. That suggests overconfidence and a potential for reckless behavior. Admiral Krell of the Korthian Empire stood abruptly. His species was not used to being criticized publicly. You dare to judge us based on a single encounter. You judged us based on 0 encounters, Bennett shot back. You tried to scan us without ever talking to us first. At least we're making judgments based on actual behavior. Chen Wei raised a hand, calling for calm. Counselors, this debate can continue forever. We can argue about rights and protocols and who is being reasonable, or we can find a practical solution that works for everyone. He looked around the chamber. Here is our proposal. Humanity will allow supervised inspections of selected vessels through proper diplomatic channels. We will share general technical specifications, enough to verify we're not carrying planet-destroying weapons. We will participate in joint military exercises to demonstrate our intentions are peaceful, but we will not allow unrestricted scanning. We will not surrender our right to privacy, and we will continue to defend our vessels against any unauthorized intrusion attempts. Vren considered this. His skin was slowly shifting from red to a calmer orange. And if we refuse? Then we continue as we are, Chen Wei said simply. We'll remain in Council space. We'll continue to defend our ships, and eventually, every species will learn the same lesson the Velkari and Korthians learned. You can choose to learn it the easy way, through diplomacy and mutual respect, or you can choose the hard way. But either way, the lesson is the same. You don't get to violate our sovereignty just because you're curious or nervous. The debate continued for hours, but slowly, grudgingly, a consensus emerged. Not everyone was happy with it. The military-focused species felt the humans were being unreasonable. The more diplomatic species felt the humans had a point. But everyone agreed on one thing. Forcing the issue would be costly. Finally, Vren announced the Council's decision. We will accept your proposal on an extended trial basis. Human vessels will be allowed to maintain their defensive measures. In exchange, you will participate in good-faith diplomatic initiatives and allow supervised inspections as offered. Additionally, all human vessels must clearly mark themselves with your species' identification symbols and broadcast warnings in all major Council languages. We can agree to those terms, Chen Wei said. As the meeting ended, Chen Wei, Hayes, and Bennett left the chamber together. Once they were in the private corridor, Hayes let out a long breath. "That was exhausting," she said. "Do you think they actually understand, or are they just scared?" "Probably a little of both," Bennett replied. "But scared is fine. Scared keeps them cautious. Cautious keeps everyone alive," Chen Wei nodded. "The important thing is we've established a precedent. No more assumptions that everyone has to follow council protocols just because they've always been followed." Part 5. 3 months had passed since the second council meeting. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in a quiet observation lounge on Harmony 7 Station, watching ships come and go through the docking ports. The view was beautiful, with the blue star providing a gentle glow that made everything look peaceful and calm. The door opened and Ambassador Lyeth entered. The Velkari had requested this private meeting, and Chen Wei had agreed. Sometimes the most important conversations happened away from the formal chambers and official protocols. Lyeth settled into a seat designed for his crystalline frame. For a long moment neither spoke. They just watched the ships moving through space, each lost in their own thoughts. "Your species confuses me," Lyeth finally said. His translator converted his harmonic speech into clear English. "You are aggressive but peaceful. You hide your secrets but offer friendship. You prepare for war but claim to want peace. I do not understand how all these things can be true at the same time." Chen Wei smiled slightly. "Welcome to dealing with humans. We confuse ourselves sometimes too." He poured 2 drinks from a bottle he had brought. The liquid was amber-colored, something called whiskey from Earth. Lyeth's species could consume it safely, and Chen Wei had learned the ambassador enjoyed trying beverages from different worlds. "We're contradictory," Chen Wei continued. "It's part of who we are. We want connection but fear betrayal. We desire peace but prepare for war. We offer friendship but guard our weaknesses. It comes from our history. We've been hurt before, so we're careful, but we still hope for better outcomes." Lyeth accepted the drink, holding the glass carefully. "It is exhausting trying to understand you." "I imagine it is," Chen Wei agreed. "But consider this. You've been the ones doing the understanding for your entire history. You and the other council species. You're used to being the ones who assess and judge. Every new species you meet, you scan them, study them, figure them out. You've never had to be the ones being figured out. That's a different experience, isn't it?" Lyeth was silent for a moment, considering this. "Perhaps, but surely you understand why we feel uncomfortable. For 3,000 years we have maintained peace through knowledge. When everyone knows everyone else's capabilities, there is no point in fighting. The outcome is predictable, so conflicts can be avoided. You disrupt this system." "We don't disrupt it," Chen Wei corrected gently. "We choose not to participate in it." "There's a difference." He took a sip of his drink before continuing. "Your system works beautifully for everyone who agrees to it. But what about those who don't? What about species who value privacy over transparency? Your system treats them as threats automatically. And that's the problem. You've created a system where joining means surrendering sovereignty, and refusing means being labeled dangerous. There's no middle ground." "So you create a middle ground by force," Lyeth observed. "We create a middle ground by defending our right to choose," Chen Wei replied. "Yes, we use force to do it. But defensive force, not aggressive force. We don't attack anyone. We don't invade anyone's territory. We just make it very expensive to invade ours. That's not aggression. That's boundary setting." Lyeth took a careful sip of the whiskey, his crystalline structure refracting the light in interesting patterns. "I have been authorized to ask you a direct question, Ambassador. Off the record, just between us. What are you hiding? What is in your ships that requires such extreme protection?" Chen Wei met his gaze steadily. "Everything and nothing." "That is not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give," Chen Wei said. "Because the truth is, we're not hiding any specific superweapon or doomsday device. We're hiding the principle of privacy itself. If we let you scan one ship, you'll want to scan all ships. If we share some specifications, you'll want all specifications. If we make one exception, everyone will demand exceptions. So we make no exceptions. We defend all our secrets equally, regardless of how important they actually are." He leaned forward. "But here's what I can tell you. Every species that has tried to scan our ships has learned something valuable. They've learned that we keep our promises. We said we would defend against unauthorized scans, and we did. We said we would not cause permanent damage, and we didn't. We said we would respond proportionally, and we have. That's worth something, isn't it? Knowing that we do what we say we'll do? Lyeth considered this. Your Dr. Hayes mentioned that your countermeasures allow you to learn about those who scan you. She said you determined we value crew safety based on how we responded to the feedback. What else did you learn about the Velkari? Chenwei smiled. That you're adaptable. After the incident, you could have demanded retaliation. You could have tried to force us to comply. Instead, you filed a formal complaint through proper channels and started working on diplomatic solutions. That shows wisdom and flexibility. Those are good traits in a potential ally. And the Korthians? They're learning, Chenwei said diplomatically. Admiral Krell sent a formal apology last week, along with a request to discuss proper protocols for future encounters. That took courage admitting his mistake. We respect that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a large transport ship maneuver into a docking bay. The Council has been discussing your proposal, Lyeth said eventually. There is growing support for revising first contact protocols to require explicit consent before scanning. It is a significant change. Many species are resistant. Change is always hard, Chenwei acknowledged, especially when it means giving up power. Your scanning technology has been an enormous advantage for millennia. Giving up that advantage even partially feels dangerous. It is dangerous, Lyeth said bluntly. What if a hostile species enters Council space and refuses scanning? How do we protect ourselves? The same way you protect yourselves from us, Chenwei replied. Through observation, through diplomatic engagement, through gradual trust building. It's slower than scanning, but it's more respectful, and respect builds stronger foundations than forced transparency ever could. Lyeth's crystalline appendages clicked in a pattern Chenwei had learned meant disagreement. You make it sound simple, but it is not. Trust takes time. We may not have time if a real threat appears. Then you make a choice, Chenwei said. Risk violating someone's sovereignty for quick information, knowing they might respond with force. Or take the time to build a relationship properly. Both choices have cost. We're just asking you to consider the costs more carefully before choosing the first option. The conversation drifted to other topics. They discussed trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and the possibility of joint scientific ventures. By the time Lyeth left, nearly 2 hours had passed. As Chenwei watched the Velkari ambassador leave, he felt cautiously optimistic. Change was happening. Slowly, reluctantly, but happening. Far away on Earth, in a secure military facility buried deep underground, Dr. Linda Hayes sat in her laboratory reviewing data. Around her, screens displayed information from every scanning incident. Each time an alien species tried to scan a human ship, the defensive systems learned more. They learned about frequency patterns, about power signatures, about tactical doctrines. Hayes pulled up a classified file that only a handful of people had clearance to access. Inside were specifications for next-generation human warships, vessels with weapon systems that made current ships look primitive, defensive capabilities that could stop almost any known attack, propulsion technology that would revolutionize space travel. None of this technology was on the ships currently deployed. The ships the aliens had encountered represented human capability from 5 years ago. The real cutting-edge technology was still being tested, refined, and kept absolutely secret. Hayes reviewed the data from the latest incident. A small independent species had tried to scan a human cargo ship. The countermeasures had worked perfectly, as always. The alien ship had learned its lesson and retreated. More importantly, Hayes had learned about another species' scanning technology. She compiled her findings into a report and marked it top secret. The report would go to military command, who would use it to further refine their defensive and offensive capabilities. Every scan attempt, every test, every challenge made humanity stronger and more knowledgeable. The galaxy thought humanity was being defensive, protecting secrets because they were vulnerable. They had no idea how wrong they were. Humanity was not hiding because they were weak. They were hiding because they were smart enough to know that the best advantage was the one your enemy never saw coming. Her assistant knocked on the door. Dr. Hayes, the simulation results are ready for the new countermeasure system. Hayes stood, stretching after hours of sitting. What are we looking at? 99.7% effectiveness against all known scanning technologies. And if the Threxians try their new deep space scanner like intelligence suggests they might, the countermeasure will not just disable it. It will map their entire fleet deployment in the process. Hayes smiled. Excellent. Prepare the specifications for deployment. and make sure it's installed on every ship in the fleet before the Threxians work up the courage to test us." She looked at the screens one more time before leaving. Each glowing dot represented a human ship somewhere in space. Each ship was a fortress, a mystery, a warning to anyone foolish enough to challenge human sovereignty.